typing. Wait, it's a trap. And I go, what? And it's not a trap, we got to go to the next chapter. And he goes, and he checks, he goes, sure enough, there are men out back. And then we look and go, there are men out front, and they all got guns, and we're trapped inside this house. And how are we going to get out? And Hayes says, he had an earlier scene, Paige is the detective, and she's the fighter. And Hayes, who never fought, is a lot like me. He was very good at falling down. And she said, what are you going to do? You're just going to fall down? How are we going to get out of this? He goes, well, I may not know anything about fighting, but I know a lot about escape. So he's got to figure out a witty way to get out of that house from the armed gunman with everything at hand. It took me 3 days to figure out what he figured out in 30 seconds. I could have wrung his neck, because all we had to do was go to the next chapter. But the character surprised me. And then I have a book called Boom, where a woman walks into an emergency room in a panic because on her arm is a tattoo that says July 30th, 9 p.m., boom. And she said, it wasn't there when I went to sleep, I woke up and it's here. And the nurse is examining her, she's thinking that maybe she got stoned and got this tattoo, and she happens to notice the clock. And when it hits 9 o'clock, the woman explodes. And so what's happening is people are getting these tattoos that just appear without warning. And if it says, sometimes it's 3 days from now, sometimes it's 4, but it says a time, a date, a time, and the word boom. And come hell or high water, you're going to blow up at that time. And it's a lot of excitement, and I have to figure out how to make an explosive tattoo, how to make it appear, and I use a lot of a fair amount of science in there, but hopefully I explain it. One of my complaints when I was a news director was reporters would go out and they would learn the terminology of a story. And you'll see this if you watch TV, and they'll go, well, they're talking about the so-and-so and the such, and they love to use the terms. And I always drilled into the reporters, you've got to explain it to people who don't know the jargon. You learn the jargon, la-di-da for you, you impress the guys you're covering, but the people don't get it. Catherine, my wife, who was in TV, got this message very good. And can I tell you her story real quick? Mm-hmm. She was out covering a guy at a place called the Idaho National Laboratory, and that's where they have done experiments with. They've got like 34 nuclear reactors at the Idaho National Laboratory. They do all kinds of experiments. And they were doing experiments on the debris from 3 Mile Island, and it was being brought in by rail cars. And we wanted to know how dangerous that was. So she asked this guy, how dangerous is that radiation? And he says, well, it comes to about 30 millimeter radio rads and blah, 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 blah. And it wasn't English. And Catherine goes, no, explain it to the layman. So she asked him again. And he goes, well, it would be blah, 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 more long words. She asked him 3 or 4 times. And finally he got it. And he goes, okay, if you're standing there when this car goes by, you will get the equivalent radiation of you standing in front of your microwave oven. There you go. Now we understand it. So when I write about science, I have a complaint about writers who write about science, and they've done the research, yay, but they don't explain it to us. It has to be in such a way that you understand what's going on. So that's what I try to do. You know, I use science in Black Valley, and then in some of the other books I do science. And I'm working on another book now that's sort of like a Native American Da Vinci Code. And it's been a hoot. I've been surprised by how things have come together in it. But it's going to be a lot of fun. In fact, right now, that'll probably be the book that comes out as opposed to the 3 already written. Although I don't know. It's sort of like people say, what's your favorite book? And it's always the one I'm writing. You know, because you're living at the time. Anybody else got any questions? Or?
What part of Georgia are you from?
I'm from a little town called Eatonton, Georgia, which is about this big. If we doubled our size, we could call ourselves Hooterville. But oddly enough, Eatonton, Georgia has a claim to fame. It has a writer was born there named Joel Chandler Harris, who wrote Uncle Remus Museums and Uncle Remus Stories, and the movie Song of the South. It was a big deal when I was growing up. They got the little log cabin. Uncle Remus Museum is there. In fact, I was 14 before I found out Zippity Doo Dah was not the national anthem. But then we have another famous writer from there. And it's the other extreme of the spectrum. Joel Chandler Harris's stories were eventually banned from school because they're written in the Native American, written in dialect. But the other writer is Alice Walker, who wrote The Color Purple. And she was born there in Georgia. So from one extreme to the other, you know, she won a Pulitzer Prize. So now she's the one we're the most proud of. And And my dad always said, make it 3, boy. Yes, sir.
How about the literary novel?
The literary novel is my mother-in-law's favorite book. And it's a book called The God of Birds. And it deals with, and in the book I had, when I first started writing it, the lead character is a coming-of-age book in the South. The lead character had a mom and a dad, but I couldn't get past my mom and dad, so I couldn't say anything bad. So I orphaned him. You know, his mother dies in childbirth, and his father is killed in a car accident, and he's raised by his grandfather. And I could make his grandfather mean, which I kind of had to have. And I think it's a good book, and eventually I'll publish it. Here's my thoughts, if I'm being honest. I love character-driven fiction. This is plot-driven fiction. I love it too. In fact, the way I got my book published was I put a sign up on my bulletin board, "It's the plot, stupid." And, but eventually I would like to have a following of readers who will trust me enough that I can move more into and try to mix the genre, character-driven with the plot-driven fiction. And at some time or another I will release The God of Birds. And it's sort of based loosely on, in our neighborhood, I have a fictional character of this, but in our neighborhood when I was growing up,